Good evening and welcome to the Wright Experience. I'm Dr. William T. Wright, Jr., the founder and host of this show. I am now beginning my 9th year as a public school educator as a superintendent, and my 24th year actually as a public school educator. Over these years, I've been fortunate enough to get to know and work with some amazing leaders across the United States. The vision of this show is to share these podcasts with you so that we can learn from people who are leading others every day. I want to thank you so very much for continuing to support this show. Please continue to share with others and spread the word. That helps me tremendously. When you hear something that you like, please drop us a comment, click like, or if you're viewing us via YouTube, please click like, and most importantly, that subscribe button. In my travels, I've learned that we have a growing audience, and for that, I am truly grateful. This evening is episode number 22 of the Wright Experience. My guest tonight is a veteran public school educator who has served K-12 public schools in progressively responsible positions, which include her initial position as a 7th grade English teacher at South Edgecombe Middle School in North Carolina, where yours truly was the principal at that time. She also has since then served as an assistant principal, a central services director, and now she's made the transition into higher education as the Chief Human Resources Officer for Elizabeth City State University in North Carolina. My guest is Dr. Shamica Long-Lane. Dr. Shamica Long-Lane is an educator, entrepreneur, and HR executive with 16 years of combined experience in K-12 and higher education. After completing her undergraduate degree in communication studies from the University of North Carolina at Greensboro, she began her career as a middle school teacher at Edgecombe County, North Carolina, and has worked in Guilford, Rockingham, Harnett, and Hertford County Public Schools in North Carolina and McCormick County Public Schools in South Carolina as a teacher, assistant principal, director, and executive director of HR. She served in all of those positions throughout her career. She's also obtained a master's in school administration from Western Carolina University and a doctorate of educational leadership from Fayetteville State University. Her leadership mantra is a quote by Michael Jordan: "Some people want it to happen, some wish it would happen, and others make it happen." She currently serves as the Chief Human Resources Officer at Elizabeth City State University. At this time, I'd like to welcome to the Wright Experience Dr. Shamica Long-Lane. Good evening.
Good evening, Dr. Wright. How are you?
I am doing well. Good to see you. I see you got your black and gold on tonight. Is that a tribute to me or?
Absolutely, sir. Absolutely.
Well, thank you very much. And also Cameron is a senior. Is that what I heard?
Yes.
Wow. That's amazing. That is absolutely. Time flies, certainly, doesn't it?
Wow. It does.
So let's get right into the questions tonight. We're certainly excited about having you on the show and having you be a part of what we're doing here. And you certainly have had a great career thus far in K-12 education and also now transitioning over to the higher ed side. So take the opportunity to talk to us a little bit about your position and your specific daily responsibilities as the Chief Human Resources Officer for Elizabeth City State University.
Sure. Well, first of all, Dr. Wright, thank you so much for having me. I hope throughout these questions, I'll get to brag on you a little bit about how pivotal you've been in my career journey. But my responsibilities at Elizabeth City State University, overseeing the Office of Human Resources and Payroll, is pretty standard for any business human resources. We are in charge of facilitating process to onboard new hires, to deal with individuals when they're having some of the happiest times when they come on board, or some of the most difficult times when they're coming to us for medical reasons, or they're expanding their family, or perhaps even losing someone in their family. And most importantly, we are the liaison between the administrators and the employees. And I like to say you can't spell heart without HR. And I believe that HR is the heartbeat of the organization. So we try to build culture and make people happy and keep them engaged so that we can retain them. Or at least if we can't retain them, that they will go out saying they had a positive experience, and hopefully they will recruit somebody great to come and replace them.
Wonderful. So approximately how many employees at Elizabeth City State?
We have around 350 permanent employees, and then we have various levels like adjunct professors, temporary employees, we have student workers. So overall, around 600 when you combine all the different types of employees.
Okay, so pretty large staff to manage and take care of all those needs. So outstanding. So, Dr. Long-Lane, there's an old saying that people, quote, people don't leave jobs, they leave bad bosses. So what do you think leaders need to do, in your opinion, to ensure that they retain employees?
Treat them with dignity and respect. There was a time where people would stay on a job for many, many years, 30 years, and then retire with a good pension. But those days are gone. There are so many opportunities, and there's basically a buyer's market for employment. So managers and leaders need to treat people with respect. There are times in leadership where you may have to discipline an employee or give them some unfortunate news. But with all of that, there's a way to say and do everything, and you can do it respectfully. And I think people will take that a long way. One of the other things is pouring into people. When you're in leadership, for the most part, somebody poured into you to help you get to where you are. I know that's one of the things that's been critical for me is having somebody, like you, to pour into me. So I encourage all leaders, particularly when you have new managers, new workers, younger workers who don't have a lot of experience in what they're doing, pour into them, get them training, get them resources, encourage them, allow them to problem solve. And every now and then you have to answer their question with a question to help them think and process themselves, because that's how they learn and grow. And ultimately, when they look good, you look good.
Very good. What about now with the challenges that we have, people returning to work? Any tips on what leaders can do to make sure that employees have what they need, particularly in an environment like this?
I think staying connected is very important. With all the different types of technology that we have, it's very easy for us to get on Zoom or Teams or whatever and keep the camera off and just talk. And then you lose that human connection. So I think it's important to still have that, to have just some one-to-one moments with your team members and then some collective moments where you can share the pains and the joys that come along with the job.
Very good. Yeah, absolutely. Very critical, particularly right now, because there's so many unanswered questions, aren't there?
Yes, very much so.
So you've also ventured into teaching at the higher education level. I don't think we mentioned that, but you've been adjunct professoring, if that's a term, yourself for a little bit here. So for leaders and listeners tonight who are interested in doing that, what advice would you give to them if they're perhaps K-12 teachers right now or educational leaders that are looking to get into adjunct professorships? What advice would you give them?
Be sure that you have the time and the commitment to give to the students. One of the things that I do, I work for Grand Canyon University. I've been doing that for some years. One part of what I did was observing student teachers, and that involved pre-COVID going out and visiting them in their environment, taking notes and submitting them back. One of the other things that I do is content expert work for dissertations. And we both know from writing dissertations how much of a journey that is. So make sure that you can give the students the attention that they need. If you're doing direct instruction, that you actually take the time to plan a lesson and give the students what they're paying for, because a lot of especially adult learners are paying out of pocket, or they're going into debt and getting loans to pay to go to school. So give them a worthwhile experience if you're going to be their professor. And when you are applying for the job, read the minimum qualifications, because a lot of people apply for jobs and they just think, well, I have a doctorate, certainly I can get that job. But just like K-12 teaching has a level of certification, becoming a professor has a level of certification as well, because we have to get SACS accredited too in order to grant degrees and diplomas, just like K-12. So make sure that you read the minimum qualifications and that you qualify for the job before you waste your time applying for a job that you don't qualify for, or the institution's time where they're looking and they're going, oh man, I thought I had a great candidate and your degree is in, criminal justice and you're trying to teach math. Like, do what makes sense.
Right. Sure. All right. So as employees are considering moving into progressively responsible positions within their organization, be it K-12, be it higher ed, or just business in general, what are some important factors? You mentioned one already, make sure you're qualified or lined up for the job. But what are some other important factors that you think need to be considered?
One thing is to serve the season that you're in. Pastor Mike Todd, who's the pastor at church in Oklahoma, he talks about serving the season that you're in.
Okay.
It's very easy to get impatient because you feel like you're ready. And so you don't give what you're doing 100% because you're so anxious to try to get to the next level. So I would say the first thing is whatever it is that you're doing, to do that with 110%. Be very good at that, be excellent, and your gifts will make room for you and your work will speak for you if you do it right. Second is don't just apply for every single thing that comes about. And I was guilty of that, particularly when I was younger. Really drill down into why it is that you want to do it. Why do you really want to go into leadership? Because leadership is mentally taxing, it's hard work, and it's lonely. So if your goal in doing it is because you're going to get a salary increase, because naturally there's more money with leadership, you want to really, really rethink your why, because leadership is about service and servantship. And if you're not willing to serve, if you're not willing to stay late, if you're not willing to answer phone calls and respond to emails to some of the craziest questions that you could hear in the whole wide world, you might not be ready for leadership. The third thing I would say is mentorship. I think it is critical that anybody who is aspiring to lead or is even currently leading, that you have a mentor. One mentor that's for you professionally, that's doing what it is you want to do, and one mentor for you personally that can kind of serve as your unofficial therapist, that you can call and you can say what you need to say to them. They're not connected to your job. They're not related to you. I mean, I guess they could be, but sometimes it'd be your own people, right? So having that personal mentor that you can vent to and be like, you know what, here's what happened, here's what I did, and before I snap, I called you. And that will help you go a long, long way, because people are people, and people will push you, particularly if they think what you're doing is what they want to do and they want to get you out of the way to get there. So you need some type of sounding board to help you and guide you to make decisions before you make a decision and you find yourself on the other side of employment.
Right. Absolutely. So now let's hear that Dr. Todd quote again now. Make sure I got it out.
Serve the season that you're in.
Serve the season that you're in. That's good stuff. That's good stuff. I had not heard that one before, but I'm sure going to use it now. Might even put it on the wall at the office. So absolutely. So as a human resources professional, so let's go here for a minute. When the organization is looking to select a leader, take us through your process as a human resources leader to prepare for that selection. What do you do?
Well, everything with positions, no matter what it is going to start with funding. So you need to make sure that you can afford the type of leadership that you want. Now, I'll use an example like purchasing. You need deodorant, right? And you can go to Dollar Tree and get deodorant. You can go to Family Dollar to get deodorant. You can go to Walmart. You can go to Target. And each level, you're going to get a different experience, even though it's the same product. So when you are advertising for leadership positions, you're going to get what you pay for. Everybody's not, so thirsty at the beginning that they're going to take $80,000 and you want $200,000 work. So you have to understand your budget. That's number one. As a leader looking for a leader in an organization, I think it's also important to understand the culture of your organization, because every place is for everybody. And if you're looking for a leadership position, you need to look beyond just the job description page, look beyond the head page on the website, and look deeply. Look at the strategic plan, look at the mission, look at the goals, look at the core beliefs, look at the experience of the students, whether K-12 or higher ed. Look at those pictures. Are all the kids smiling? Are all the kids looking just alike? Are there pictures of the professionals that work there too? How one-sided is it? Because we live in a very global and diverse world. So you need to know what type of environment do you serve best in. For me, I have learned over time that there are some environments where I just don't have any business. And so I don't apply for those types of jobs because it's not going to be where I'm going to be able to be my best self. So I think it's important that you're your own best advocate as an organization to put the information out there so that the right type of individuals will apply for the job.
How about that? So So fit and finish and all of that is extremely important. That's what I hear you saying. And also, there is a process. You don't just post a job and 3 days later you hire somebody and that's it. It's a process.
Oh, absolutely not. And with each agency, it depends on who has the same approval.
Sure.
For example, in K-12 environment, it's usually the Board of Education. In higher ed, what I've learned is most decisions rest with the manager and then has to have approval by the chancellor. So understanding what that process looks like, and basic things like a background check. If you lived in a lot of places, like you and I, your background check may take a little longer to come back. So it's going to take a little longer to get you started. Then you have to look at things like payroll dates, because those of us who are fortunate enough to work for the state and get paid once a month, there's a process that goes along with that to make sure that you can get paid at a certain time. So everybody can't start on every day of the week. And then there's a responsibility on the candidate as well to submit all of their documentation, employment verification, education verification, getting transcripts, all of that stuff plays a part in the hiring process. And there are some things that are in the control of the organization and some that are not, and some that are in the control of the hands of the candidate.
Very good. All right. So in K-12 schools, maybe in higher ed also, you'd have to answer that question. I'm not really sure. But the overwhelming majority of teachers, of course, are female. And then percentage of female leaders, though, is not reflective of that same thing. So we got, a bunch of female teachers, but that's not necessarily transitioned into leadership. And even more so, the percentage of African-American female leaders is smaller. So what needs to be done to change this? What can be done even to change this?
I think, again, the mentoring piece for those of us who are African-American females who have been fortunate enough to get into leadership, I think it's important for us to lift while we climb and help those that are behind us, that are aspiring, so that they can learn from the pitfalls and the mistakes that you made over the past and not repeat those and be better. I also think salary, because we all know statistically that men typically make more money than women. So we have an equal pay issue that may exist. And there are many women who are the head of their households. So they need to be in a place where they can be paid so that they can support their families. And that may present an issue as well. And then, there is the perception of the angry Black woman. And I think TV and social media has really played into that stereotype that we are angry Black women. And when we get in positions of power, we're going to be, one of those inappropriate language words that people use to explain females who are aggressive. And I think if we don't do away with that stereotype, that's just going to continue to hinder us and hinder their respect for us as we move into leadership. And I think that if there are more programs within an organization that focus in on female leadership, I think that will be helpful, that we don't need to just wait on society to decide that we really need women to lead, but organizations can do their part when they're recruiting for leaders to really hone in, just like they do for diversity as a whole. That's part of it as well, that they do some extensive work to try to reach out to get more females into the organization, to train them properly, and then to set up succession planning so that they do have the opportunity to move up within the organization.
And there really don't appear to be very many. I've not heard of very many leadership profiles that are tailored to females, or particularly African-American females or minority females, Latino females. I've just not heard of many of those. Not sure that you have or not, but I've not heard of very many. So that might be something that needs to be developed in the future, certainly.
Yeah, that's what I was thinking. That's a great idea.
Because there absolutely are some amazing leaders out there that just need opportunities. There's no question about that. So, all right. So, Dr. Long-Lane, what are some of your proudest moments in your career thus far? You're about halfway, 16 years. They say in education that's about halfway to where you end up being. So, what are some of your proudest moments thus far?
I think when I was a teacher, my proudest moments were at the end of the year when we were able to get kids moved from one grade level to the next. Because in the area where we were, a lot of kids didn't graduate high school. But if we were able to pour into them in middle school, they had a higher chance of success when they got to high school.
Sure.
So for me, I was the fun teacher, doing all kinds of events. Like I taught because I had to, but I really worked so I could do the other things, the coaching and the Mayball and graduation and SGA and all those things. So those were some of the proudest moments that I had as a teacher. As an administrator, I was able and fortunate to work under a great principal who allowed me to do some of the same things that you let me do as a teacher. So I was over SGA and the gospel choir and pep rallies and homecoming, and to see the smile on the kids' faces and the parents' faces when their babies were all dressed up on the court or for the prom or whatever the event was. That was rewarding for me because that may have been the first time they had the opportunity to see their child really be in the spotlight.
Right.
As a central office person, I would say that my proudest moments were in process improvement, like moving us from a paper application in Hertford County to an online application 2 times, to move our website from the legacy version to do 2 refreshes so that we were able to get our story out there and recruit some quality talent that were ready to come in and do what's best for students. And the one-to-one project that the phenomenal tech team that's still there was able to take from theory to action, because you and I had accomplished that goal in McCormick before we had the chance to come to Hertford County, and you basically said we need to do it again. So we had a new director, Dr. Silver, that came in and got us started, and then the same core that's there now, Reggie and Paul and Latoya now, and Antron added, and we were able to move that forward. So when COVID came, we were pretty much already on track and ready to move forward, at least on the secondary level. So it wasn't that big of a push to say, okay, well, let's take them out of the carts and move them out so the kids had technology at home. I would say that that's probably my proudest moment, not because I did the work, but because I got to be a part of it and help them brainstorm and bring your vision into fruition. Because as a number 2 person, like the role that I serve, one of the things that you want to do is make your boss look good. And every time there was an opportunity for us to hear your vision and to bring that into reality, those were some of the proudest moments for me.
I appreciate the shameless plugs there too. But thank you for that. And certainly your work was very instrumental in helping us be more prepared for COVID and everything that you've mentioned. So thank you for that. I appreciate that. So I've heard you have conversations with folks over the years, when you knew I was listening and when you didn't know I was listening, encouraging them to further educate themselves and pursue progressively responsible positions. Why is that such an emphasis for you?
I just believe in the power of education to give you an opportunity. My family is originally from Halifax County, and when I was born, my mom was a teen mom, and we lived with my grandparents, and we didn't even have indoor plumbing. Like you would think somebody that young live with that. Yeah, we live with that pot in the house. So I know what it's like, as the Bible says, to be a base and
Sure.
to be where I am now, to be abound. So for me, it's so critically important to know what it's like to be on the other side, to have WIC and food stamps and all those things that people look down upon, and to say I was able to go with the encouragement of my family and get my education and build a better life for my family, that I want everybody to be able to do that. Probably so much so that I got on the nerves talking about it all the time. But I like to think I'm a pretty perceptive person. And when I meet somebody, I like to see what they already have in them, pour into them, and then pull the greatness out that I can see within them. Because honestly, that's what happened to me, particularly when I became a teacher. I didn't have a job. I had to move back home with my mom when I had my son when I graduated, and I didn't even have a suit to wear to my interview. The first lady of my church gave me a suit to wear to come and interview with you to get my job, and you gave me a chance when nobody else would give me a chance. I had been on like a long-term sub on the other side of the county, and you poured into me when I was a first year teaching. You asked me what I wanted to do, and I told you I wanted to do what you do, and you told me what I need to do it. And so I was able to do it. So because you did that for me, I feel like I should be able to do that for anybody who will listen to me at this point, because you just don't know how that can change the trajectory of somebody's life. Like, you could have easily dismissed me, and I might have went back to McDonald's because that's what I did really well before I went to college. But because you took the time to tell me that I could do it, even so much to say, you remind me of myself when I was young, and I was like, really? Me? Little girl from the trailer park from Southern Terrace? and so you helped me believe that I could do anything. And so honestly, I feel like I've been able to do some of everything to the point now I don't even know what I'm gonna do next. Because I've had so much success in such a short amount of time, simply from going in there in that interview with my little briefcase my mama gave me for graduation, and you gave me a chance.
I remember that now that you mention it. I sure do. Yeah. So, and what an amazing seventh grade language arts teacher you became. In fact, not unbeknown to you, I challenged one of your colleagues by saying that I think she'll beat you in terms of proficiency. And I won't go into all of the details, but let's just say you proved me right as principal, and both of your scores actually went up that year, which was, of course, the right outcome that we needed for students. So certainly I am proud of your career and the things that you've done so far. So let's talk a little bit about some of your sources. You've already mentioned several, but who and what are some of the sources that you depend on for leadership growth?
Okay. Well, number one, God, because he is the source, period.
Sure.
I don't even have to go into that. Honestly, another source for me has been my mom. My mom has been a teacher assistant in Edgecombe County for over 30 years. But if you want to talk about leadership from behind the scenes, like my take charge, my initiative, my ambition, that comes from watching her, not even ever having to be in a leadership position, but still being able to lead. And all the kids know Miss Holmes because, like I said, she's been a TA for over 30 years. Secondly, I would say watching my pastor. I've been at my same church, Born Again Ministry, BAM TGC, since its inception in '96. And he's a very straightforward, tell it like it is type of person. And I'm a very straightforward, tell it like it is type of person.
You're kidding.
And that has been very much an influence on me. And of course, I've already talked about you and how you've influenced my career. One of the other things that's important for me is doing a lot of reading.
Sure.
And not because I read a lot of like long, thick books, but purposeful books like Good to Great.
Mm-hmm.
I'm taking the tenets from that and using it and applying it throughout the different facets of my career. And then getting on sources like LinkedIn and Twitter and reading little brief snippets of information and then sharing them out and letting somebody else read that too. And just pulling out the points that, again, are pertinent for me and sharing them. And the things that are not as helpful, I still keep those in the back of my mind because you just never know when the situation might arise that, oh, I do remember reading that in such and such place, and I can see how that can be helpful now. The other thing, and this is something I learned from you, is Googling like bad leadership, like principal fired, and reading what it is that they did to get fired, because that's something you don't need to do. And learning from other people's mistakes. And it's unfortunate, you hate to read stuff like that, but that's the reality. And so you go, wow, that wasn't very smart of them. Let me make sure I don't put myself in a situation to do that. And that's been very resourceful for me. And I would say the last thing is the AAA, ask, analyze, assess. And my new team that I've been with now for about 11 months, they say, Shamica, when you don't say anything, I don't know what you're thinking, and it scares me. And I say, just because I don't say anything don't mean I didn't see it or I didn't hear you. Something else that I got from you. I'm learning to listen and be very analytical and not knee jerking and just saying anything off the cuff, because that's how people get on Frontline on Google where it said, so and so got fired or let go or whatever, because they don't use the resource that they have of their 2 ears and listening more and speaking less.
I heard you say something very earlier in answering that question when you're talking about mom that I think is is critical. You said you do not necessarily have to be a leader, have a leadership role in order to lead. And I think people miss that sometimes. We wait until somebody names us, whatever it is that the job title is, before we decide to lead. And the best leaders show leadership all along. And then also the many examples that you use, I think, are absolutely awesome, and certainly things that we need moving forward as leaders. This leadership journey is a complex one, to say the least, and it's ever changing because of the challenges that we have, particularly in education, and I would dare say healthcare. Right now are probably the two areas in which leadership or even like you said, serving in servitude roles, and not necessarily being leaders, but still having to lead in order to be successful. It's so key right now at this stage and time in our life. So anyway, is there anything else that you can think of that I did not cover in this podcast thus far that you'd like to share with the audience?
I just want to encourage anyone who's thinking about leadership to really drill down to your why and determine where you're going to be a good fit, and then just go for it. I've been fortunate enough to follow you many places throughout my career. So if you can find a good leader who sees something in you, and that you see something in them that makes you want to follow them, then don't be afraid to take a leap and go for it, because chances are you can do it.
Outstanding. Hold on with me for a minute and we'll come back and close out the show.
Okay.
My guest next week will be Mr. James Futrell, who is the Director of Engagement and Access for Durham Public Schools in North Carolina. Mr. Futrell has a unique career path of having started as a guidance counselor and then transitioning into school administration. And ultimately now he works as a district level supervisor at a large district in North Carolina. I look forward to the experience. Also later this month, I will be interviewing an author and motivational speaker and a young leader who, in addition to his work at a community college in North Carolina, is also an amazing leader and mentor for African-American males. The Wright Experience, I'm absolutely pleased at our progress thus far. And thank you all. Everywhere I go now, I'm hearing about more and more people viewing and enjoying our podcast. And so for that, I am extremely grateful and thankful to you. Dr. Long-Lane, I'd also like to say to you, thank you so much for being my guest. I absolutely appreciate you being a part of what we're doing here. And as much as you have given me all these shameless plugs and so forth tonight, I just want you to know that I'm extremely proud of you. I had forgotten the briefcase, but I do remember interviewing you, and when you first came in as an aspiring teacher, and it's been an absolute joy to see you progress into the amazing leader that you are now, and I'm just very proud of you. I guess this would be almost like a dad moment, I guess, or something. I'm very proud of you, and certainly we look forward to having you back on the podcast at a later date.
Thank you so much, sir. I appreciate all that you've done, and keep doing your thing. I'm watching every week, and you make me proud as well. And I talk about you all the time. I know they know who in the world is boss, but I'm always talking about my boss because you've been so good to me, and I appreciate you, and just continue to grow and help inspire the next generation of leaders.
Well, thank you. And I hope this podcast serves to make us all better. Thank you for watching The Wright Experience.